Hello and welcome to Skeindeer Knits. My name is Ellie and I am a Norwegian living and knitting in London. And you can follow me on Instagram. I am Skeindeer over there, and you can find me as a designer on Ravelry, where I am called Skeindeer Knits. And please, by all means, do join my Ravelry group, Skeindeer Knits, which is the best place to take part in all the knit-alongs, get pattern support, get in touch with me, ask questions, talk to the other people in the Skeindeer community, if I may call it that. It's a really good place to be. I absolutely love my Ravelry. Can't talk today either. I love the group. I'm so happy for the activity that seems to just run itself in that group. You guys are awesome. And yes, welcome to the podcast. If you're a new viewer, welcome. This is my knitting talk show. I call it a podcast. Obviously it is in video format, and I just talk about knitting. It's not a class, it's just me babbling about stuff I like, trying to inspire everyone to be into the same stuff that I like, because I like it, because I think it's awesome. And if you're a returning viewer, welcome back. Thank you so much for coming back. I will just say, the last episode I had a bit of a brain fart and uploaded the video, and it was set to private for the first couple of hours, so I hope none of you missed it in your feeds, because it took me a few hours to realize. It was actually when I went to bed. I was like, it's funny, I haven't had any reactions to that video yet, like not a single comment, nothing. Let me check. Oh, nobody can see it, that's why. So I hope you didn't miss it. I've heard lots of people talk about missing YouTube videos lately, that there are subscriptions list on YouTube. So if you go to youtube.com/subscribe or subscriptions, something like that, it's on the sidebar, the one to the left. They can't always find the videos that they are subscribed to, even though they are subscribed to them, and it's not entirely clear why. It's like YouTube thinks they know more what they want to see than what they have set up themselves. So I have seen lots of podcasters advise their viewers to tick the little bell button next to where it says subscribe. I would only advise you to do that if you actually want email reminders of when I put up videos. I can totally understand that when I put up things like Vlogust or Vlogmas, you know, a video every day, then that's a bit intense for most of you, so I'm not going to tell you that that is something you should totally do. But if you are very scared of missing out of videos, scared is a bit extreme, that is a way to make sure that you are definitely being notified. Other than that, I mean, I put up videos roughly weekly, so you can just check bi-weekly if that's like that works for you. But it's nice if you want to be subscribed anyway, whether you want notifications or not. That's just something that makes me happy. And so yes, let's jump straight into the admin. I am the runner of 2 knit-alongs at the moment. That's quite modest for me. I am running the year-long knit-along, where we aim to make 6 pairs of colorwork mittens for the duration of 2018. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna make it. Let's just say that. I've been teasing you guys with a lot of patterns I'm working on. I'm being published here and there, and therefore has to be kept secret. I know for sure that 2 accessory patterns are definitely happening now, and I know for sure that 2 garment patterns are definitely happening, one of which I had to restart yesterday and it needs to be done by the end of the month, so that's throwing me in a bit of a panic. That was a huge digression for saying we have a mitten knit along. Anyway, it's a mitten knit along. It's ending at the end of the year. I hope you will have 6 pairs of colorwork mittens to show me by then. I do want you to post a collection photo of them all at the end of the year in the FO thread when I open it in December. If you have by any means gifted some of the mittens, so you can't do a compiled photo, you can of course post individual photos, or make yourself a collage where you just post 1 photo. That works too. It's just I would really like to see something along the lines of boxer socks but for mittens, that kind of thing. I think that would be really, really cool. But it's not a requirement, it's just, you know, try to if you can. Nobody cares what tea I'm drinking, I'm going to tell you anyway. I got a huge shipment of tea from my friend Shamika, who lives in New York, where they have David's tea, which every knitter is obsessed with apparently, if they like tea. And I got the new Nordic mug with knit stitches on, which I almost think they should call Nordic Stitches mug, except that would upset Lily. But you know, it's a mug with stitches and it's burgundy, and I had to have it. Well, it's kind of plum, but plum is also burgundy if you ask Skeindeer. It's got David's tea inside as well. It's got Candy Cane Crush. Not Candy Crush, that would be a terrible name. Candy Cane Crush, which is a black tea with little crushed pieces of candy cane that's like infused in the tea. I can't show you without spilling my tea, but it makes it all look smoky and has a slightly sweet taste to it, but not too much, because I don't really like sweet teas. I don't put sugar in my teas, but it's very nice. So she was really clever and found it on sale from last year's batch, but obviously they're gonna put up a new batch for Christmas. So I don't know if you want to like drink the same tea as me or whatever, then that's an option. I always like have to say these things because there will always be someone asking where they can get stuff and stuff. So I sound like a constant advertisement. Oh, that's hot. Anyway, I am also running the Skeindeer Sockalong Mitten Club, or did I just call it the Sockalong Mitten? The second Sockalong Mitten Club, anyway. I started this in August, same as last year, but obviously new mittens. It's a subscription club. Each pattern is exclusive to this club. So guys, I know there's been a few asking, no, you cannot get individual patterns. This is exclusive to the club. It would be very unfair of me if I started to let some get hold of individual patterns when the very premise of people buying the whole membership is that they get exclusive access to the patterns. So no, even if you're doing a fiber share, which I've had a few people ask, I'm sorry. I am so flattered that you would like my patterns, but really it's all or nothing with this club. That's kind of the point of a club. So I hope you understand and respect that, because I'm having a lot of questions like that and I'm like, it says black and white on the page. Just, yeah. So I didn't really explain what the club is. You get a pattern per month. You got a pattern when you maybe have bought the club in August. That was the Aran 2 chunky weight speedy Sockalong mitten pattern. And then the first pattern came out in September, which was the Evia mittens, which are in DK weight. You could probably also use worsted weight for that, I should think. It depends kind of on the gauge. There comes with 2 gauges to get 2 different sizes, both roughly women's medium. I will say though, if you are disappointed to only find women's medium, then you can just knit that tighter to get smaller sizes, perhaps also with finer yarn, and knit it looser, perhaps also with thicker yarn to get a larger size. It's very, very flexible. I just haven't written down how to do it for every size because it tends to be a bit confusing if beginners to Sockalong mittens see a lot of different gauges and they don't quite know what to do, and I'm trying to make this a step-by-step beginner friendly process. So the more mittens that come out, the more different gauges and sizes I am going to suggest to you, but you can already do it, I promise. So I am already preparing for the next mitten pair that's going to come out in October. I need to be ready before I head to Bergen Knitting Festival, really, because that wraps up just before the 1st of October. So I've already photographed them. I'm looking for a name and it's like all happening. It's going to be quite similar to Evia. It's the same weight. So it works off roughly the same way, just to get you into it, because a lot of people did really like the DK weight mittens from last year. That's all I did last year, but this year it's only going to be 2. But I really understand and appreciate that you guys want to have some quick gift knits early on, and then we're going to narrow down the weight as we approach Christmas and kind of ease you into tight gauge mittens, I suppose. I will also say that if you haven't joined the club yet and you're thinking about it, you haven't missed out on anything. It's never too late to join the club. It's not like, oh, you missed out on the first month. Damn. It really is open to newbies all the time. So there you are. Gonna quickly wrap that up, just to say that if you are wondering about what yarns you could use, I have made bundles for each kind of category of mittens. There's the Sportive 4-ply bundle and there's the DK weight worsted around their bundle in my Ravelry favorites. I'm Skeindeer on Ravelry, so you can have a look there. Now, transition. I was hosting a 3rd knit along, which was the Skeindeer Sockalong. Apparently I have a thing for hosting calcimon patterns. Sorry for tooting my own horn, but that was the thing that I did because I launched the Sockalong Club in, was it April? And I wanted to open a cal for all my colorwork sock patterns, all my sock patterns, sock colorwork. And I, upon request, decided to prolong it across all of summer, because really a lot of people do prefer sock knitting in the summer, because summer is hot and you only want to knit small things, if at all. So I have drawn winners, and I'm going to show you the price for the number 1 winner. That's going to get a physical item. The runner-up mittens. The runner-up winners are going to get a pattern of mine of their choice. So I've done part purchasing and part stash diving for this price, and that is a West Yorkshire spinner skein that I by accident bought myself, realizing I already had it. So it's not a complete stash dive, because as soon as I realized I already had one, I just put this in the giveaway price pile. So this is perfect because it's a sock yarn. It's a self-striping sock yarn. It's called Blue Lagoon. Looks a bit worn here. It's fine. Trust me. I love this yarn. I love West Yorkshire Spinners. It's one of my favourite sock yarns. It's very hard wearing, but it feels very nice. I trust this yarn in holding up my sock yarn. You can tell if you want to break the yarn with your hands, which is what I do because I'm too lazy to pick up a scissor. It's gonna hurt, and that's a sure sign that this is a very, very strong base, and you could probably crank out 2 pairs of socks if you use contrast yarn for the heels, toes and cuffs. So you get that. And the other prize, I did a bit of a stash dive on this. I was going to sell it in a D-stash, but I decided, you know what, I'm gonna be generous and give away this thing that I bought myself about a year or 2 ago. Woolmice skein. It isn't self-striping as such, but if you do socks with them, it will pull so that it's sort of automatically striping in a sort of incidental way. Of course, you can knit other things with it as well, but it is a sock base. It is their 80% woolly, 20% polyamide. So yeah, and it's called Emil, and yeah, 150 grams on this thing, so you can definitely crank off 2 pairs of socks there, I should think. Although the meterage of Woolmice sock yarn tends to be a tad bit shorter than your usual sock yarn, so you do want to look into that, of course. But I trust that the winner of this will be capable. And the winner is, I'm going to put it on screen because she's got particular spelling, but it's LiindaE. LiindaE, because it's a Norwegian, which is cool. I always get excited when I'm kind of reminded that I have Norwegian viewers and Cal participators, because I have sort of targeted this podcast so much to the external world that it's like I get very excited when I get viewers from home. I hope that made sense. So Linda, you get this. You just have to send me your address on Ravelry. Of course, if you are in Trondheim or around there, or you're going to Bergen Knitting Festival, we can just meet up and exchange there. But otherwise, I will of course ship this to you as soon as I can. So do message me on Ravelry to make sure I have your address. Speaking of Ravelry though, I am so behind on my messages. I keep trying to be on top of them, but I've got messages from back to April. I try to get to the most important things, like anything to do with pattern support I always get to, but I do really want to urge you, if you have pattern support questions, to put them in the group, because usually I know with myself, when I want pattern support help, I want it now and I can't give it now as the designer because I do stuff and I have a PhD, and let's not even talk about that. But people in the group have already knitted the pattern or are familiar with my pattern writing style, and they may just know general things, and they are so helpful. So please do use that group. I already have dedicated threads for each pattern or collection, so there are already places that are suitable to ask. Anyway, the runner-up winners, I am on a roll of digressions today, but the runner-up mittens, but the runner-up winners are, I'm going to put it on the screen, I'm going to read it from my screen as well. It is Violetmittens, who I'm sure has won stuff here before, because that sounds awfully familiar, and it's paulafralick, I think. It's very small writing here. anettemcl. So you guys, your name's down here. Please read, make sure if that's you or not. If it's you, you can private message me on Ravelry, tell me which pattern from my kind of design shop on Ravelry you would like. So yeah, just pick any single patterns in my Ravelry shop and let me know what you want, and I will gift it to you, because I can't ever have just one winner for my cows. I don't like that. I like having multiple winners. I like having my cows to be a high winner chance. It just seems like, I don't know, I just like it. Now, I have been to Perth Festival of Yarn, and I've been to Edinburgh, and life has happened and I was not able to record the week I returned. So we have, as you may have noticed, skipped a week. So there will be a lot of knitting and purchases to go through. So I'm gonna just start with one whip that I picked up and briefly knitted on in Perth. It's Jadeite by Salhus Tricotagefabrik. More on that in my show notes if you want to find the pattern. This is the cardigan. It now has 2 sleeves with the little green wedge. I can't remember if I showed you the green wedge just before I left. I don't think I have, because I only had 1 green wedge when I obviously started the sleeves. Now we have 2. The sleeves are completely done, and all I need to do now, literally all that's left, is to just knit back and forth down to until I'm done, because you're already working in the button bands as you go, because also, just like me, does not really care for weaving in ends, and like doing a lot of finishing stuff and just like having it done when you're done. So it will be done when I'm done. I just have to knit and purl an awful lot. What I have done though is doing some bust darts. I thought that was a bit odd because this is a very much a positive ease relaxed fit cardigan, but it sort of makes sense because it's still gonna be different from front and back. And she has a really interesting way of measuring this. I'm gonna try to cover it briefly without giving away too much, but basically just get lots of hair out of the way. Find top of your shoulder. This is usually nicely indicated with a seam if you're wearing clothes at all. It also helps if you're wearing a bra. You take a measuring tape, have it hang across the back here, come down here to where your bra ends. Okay, note down that number, how long that measures. Do the same from the front across the kind of broadest part of your breast and then down to your bra wire or whatever you're wearing or nothing. Compare the two, and that's how you find which of the bust dart sizes she offers you should do. And I think that helps to understand a lot of things in knitting patterns, not just this particular one, but understanding like things like yokes. This is not at all a yoke, this is the ziggurat method, which is kind of mimicking a satin sleeve construction. Well, it is a satin sleeve construction. But I'm thinking a lot about yokes, and lots of people complain that yokes are ill-fitted, but yokes are not supposed to be fitted. Reason being is because a yoke will be pretty much the exact same front and back. Same thing applies to raglans usually. They will have the same stitch count front and back, and then you have the same stitch count for each sleeve. You can move the sleeves further back to have more stitch counts in the front relative to the back, but then your garment will ride up in the neck, which you may want to some extent, but it will also ride up in the lower back. So you could add short rows to adjust for these things. But at the end of the day, the more you go up in size for a yoke, the more stitches you are adding both to the front and the back. And that difference for the front and the back will play in there, and which is often why people who will knit a larger yoke will complain that, oh, this yoke was so baggy in the back. And I'm like, there's no way that yoke would have not been baggy in the back unless you did shift around the sleeves, or you put in some decreases on the back as soon as you had split for sleeve and body, I suppose. I think there's a lot of modifications that maybe the individual knitter has to do, because it's very hard to anticipate for a designer. But it's just something I've seen on various yoke designs on Ravelry, where those who have incidentally made larger sizes often had issues with it being loose on the back. So it's just something, a tangent I had again, that you may find useful if you are one of those larger busted ladies that need bigger sizes but find that the back of the yoke becomes a problem. I talked about this a lot in my class in Perth, about how you can put various decrease and increase darts in the sides and in the back to make things fit your body a bit better. And it doesn't require that you have a certain shape, a certain hourglass shape or whatever. You just shape it to you, you know? So yeah, that's another digression, me talking about yokes when I'm knitting something that is completely different than a yoke. But there you have it. So yes, it has more rooms for the ladies now. Not that it needed it, but it sort of will make it sit more the same way front and back, and it will look a lot more well tailored, which is pretty much all what the Ziggurat book by Ysolda Tricotagefabrik is about, which is why I recommend it so much, because it's a tailoring minded book that fits to kind of my knitting mindset of knitting top down and having fewer seams and that kind of thing. So I'm using Joe Sharp yarn. It's a wool silk cashmere blend, but the silk and the cashmere, if that's what it was, it's very not very noticeable. I'm really just noticing the tweedy wool, so I'm wondering if maybe the percentage of the other two has been a bit exaggerated. I know other people who have used yarn from the same mill have come into questioning there, but I don't know about this yarn. It might be fine. It might just be that I can't really feel what fibers things are all the time. It's funny actually, I got this from the kind of de-stash pot at Wild and Woolly here in London, and turns out I know the person who donated it. I didn't really realize it was her, and yeah, it's now gone to a good home, so you can rest assured it's becoming something nice, I suppose. I hope, whenever I finish. It isn't getting priority now though. It's a nice simple knit I can bring out whenever I need to be a social person, but I have so much like pressure knitting right now, which isn't very good, but I need to stop promising to do all the things. So yeah, I counted I need to finish like several pairs of socks, and I think like 5 mitten pairs or something. most of which are not even on the needles and they need to be done fairly soon. And I'm like, and I was just told that I need to finish my PhD in half a year, which, like, we can always use extenuating circumstances. I could always go part-time. There's lots of things that could happen, but it would be nice actually if I was done. So I am a bit, you know, I'm gonna try not to make that stress affect this podcast. This is actually very nice to get back to after a week's break. I sometimes actually do feel like recording for the podcast is necessary for my mental health, because I notice now that I haven't done it for more than a week, I feel a bit out of sorts. So it's very nice to be back here. Now, where was I with Hodgson's Joy that has now been launched into a pattern that you can actually get from the fibre company on Ravelry? I promised to be done with this by the 1st of September with photos and everything, and it's really nowhere near. Well, it's actually quite close to being done, but again, it's one of those things that I'm very sad to say I can't give much priority, because I have promised so many other things that really, if I'm gonna, you know, pay the bills and all that stuff, I really need to do. So I've gotten this far. I told you I was being a bit of a student earlier. I had a bit of a, I had to be in the classroom and learn about becoming a teacher, and I tried to not knit and realized I'm not paying attention anymore. I need to knit. So I just picked up my knitting and nobody said anything, and if anything, people looked very impressed, and even one of them in my group, turns out, was a knitter. I just didn't knit much anymore because PhD life. But yeah, that was really cool, and people understanding, and it's like a very, very comfortable space where they were talking about how to make the classroom a safe space, how to take into account the people who have special needs, how to not overly generalize your student population, not to assume that they're all of the same mold. It was really good. It really spoke to me, and like talking about different learning style without pandering to those unscientific ideas about like, oh, visual learner, which, like, yeah, you can be a more visual minded person, which I totally am, but it was like very, I don't know, appropriate, and I really liked it, and I was able to knit without feeling too gawked at. So we have the front flap, if I can call it that. So, you know, this is the stake that I put in because I can't listen to the rules, and this just needs a tad bit more decreasing for the here or something, and I can leave that on the needles, and I need to do the other front the same way, and then I can just work up the back, and all it needs then it's sewing together with the sleeves, which are done, both of them. Yeah, both sleeves done. Whoop, 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 whoop. They look really nice. I'm gonna love this thing once it's done. I love it for it to be done when it's autumn anyway. And then I just, yeah, I have to work up some button bands, which I do fairly quickly most of the time, so it's not that far off, but it's just not something I can give 100% priority right now. I just have, yeah, other things to do, and that design that needs to be done by the end of the month, that I had to start over again last night. Gosh, what is this? I'm gonna try to do some grafting and stuff so that not everything needs to be reknitted. That should be fine, but yeah, it was fine, the design in the first place. There's a lot of similar shapes out there, but I was not happy with it that way. I need to be able to stand for my design when I'm putting out something. I can't be like apologizing for something that I have put up for sale. So for me to yeah, stand for it, you know, stand for my creation, I decided to give it a frog and reknit, even though it's gonna make me mad, but you know. So this thing that is not my design, it's a Sarah Hatton design that I'm doing for the fibre company. It's going, and you can now actually get both the yarn and the pattern yourself if you want, because the fibre company have launched both. The yarn is Lore, and it's so nice. It's Romney lamb's wool. I love it so much, and the difference between this body and the soaked sleeves, it's just worlds apart. So if you do find the skeins in your local yarn shop and you give it a squish and you find, I don't know, trust me, after a soak in pure water, it will be so different. It will be so soft. I mean, it's not going to turn into cashmere, but I would totally, I could do a shawl with this, you know. I wouldn't say it's like shelter loft soft, but it's like the next to that. I have also put a little bit of a dent in my rocaine, which is in this beautiful bag that Ingvild, who is Ingvild Music on Instagram, has made. She makes amazing project bags and was so kind to give me one, and I love it so much. And I love that I can have my rocaine in here because the colors totally match, because it's got this like night sky interior, and my rocaine by, what's her name, DyeNinja from Pom Pom, the autumn magazine for 2016. I can't remember things. Anyway, it is in here, it is happening, but again, not one of those knits that I can really give priority right now. I have 16 garments on the needles. Some of them are my designs, most of them are just stuff I'm doing for fun, and I'm like, there's no time for fun. So I have been knitting on this a little bit when I was on the train back and forth to Scotland, and yeah, I have apparently quit mid-row. Thank you so much, past Ellie. Why did you do that? Anyway, the front is done. The front is done. Obviously needs a neckline, but yeah, this sits a lot lower. It's just stuck on the same cable because that's the kind of person I am. So this goes a lot higher and needs to be grafted to the back shoulders. I am now working up the back, which is where I am currently mid-row. I guess maybe I had to leave the train or something. I don't know. So it is happening. It's happening fairly quickly. I don't really feel like I've put much time into this, and I'm like nearly done with the body minus the rib. And then I would just need to, yeah, add the rib, the neck, rib, and the sleeves. And I think the sleeves will go fairly fast because I do tend to knit sleeves relatively fast. The wider they are, the more I can use my short circulars, and I do believe that is the thing I will be doing here. They do look quite wide, the sleeves. And yeah, the yarn I'm using is Triskelion yarn. Just so happen to have the label here still. You can see when we have some focus. So yeah, that is the yarn in question. So yeah, that wasn't much I had to say about that. I do think I need to make more substantial progress on all of these projects before I have something to write home about truly. But you know, I have knitted on all of them for the past few weeks, so it needs to be reported to you guys, right? I did realise when going to Perth that I hadn't really brought any knits that were too people friendly. The Hodgson's Joy was requiring a little bit too much shaping. Yes, the jadeite is pretty smooth sailing from now on, but I couldn't remember the buttonholes, and rocaine is very dark and textured, so that can be a bit tricky in certain light situations as well. Plus there's one little part of the chart that I have such a hard time following. I think if you knitted rocaine, you know what part I mean. It's not like the biggest piece, it's just, it's continuous upward, so you're always going to be dealing with it. So I needed a simpler project, and so because Shamika, who was there, who's my yarn mule from the States, had brought me some of my American orders, so I decided, with the help of my Swift and one of my favorite people, Amy Florence, who honestly kept me sane during the entire festival. So thank you, Amy, and thank you for being my Swift. She helped me wind up this little gobstopper. I realized I could have just bought a gobstopper from Nomadic Yarns, but I got it in the skein because I thought I could wind it at home, but obviously up in Perth I couldn't wind it, so this is what's left. This is about half of it because I have knitted up most of the socks. This is the first one. It just needs a rib. I thought I'd use the same contrasting color as I've used other places. The yarn I picked up in Perth, and I can't remember what they were called. They were absolutely lovely women. I think, I wonder if you guys, were you Spanish? I'm sorry, but they really, yeah, helped me find the right contrast color, which was the closest we could find to the purple here. And yeah, it's a bit annoying that the cable has been pulled out half the stitches, so they are live, and kind of I try not to be too reckless with this sock now. About constructions, I knitted it toe up. I've sort of cheekily borrowed the toe up toe from Amy, but I do make one lefts and rights instead of making yarn overs, which I think she does, but it seemed to work out for me. And then I just knit until I am about 6-7 rounds away from the heel, which I can count based on the stripes, so I know that I can finish just where there's a stripe ending. And then I increase every other round 1 stitch on each side of the heel, so that I have 6 more stitches to work on for the heel, so I can get a deeper heel. I did decrease again when I came to the leg, and I knitted up the leg until the length that I wanted, and I'm now gonna use half of what I have left of the contrasting yarn to yeah, do the cuff, and I will be doing that all at the same time. So I'm now working up the second leg, which I had actually nearly finished until I realised 2.5 hours into my train ride from Edinburgh to London, I hadn't done the decreases for the leg after I'd done increases for the heel. So I had to frog the leg that I spent 2.5 hours doing in a half asleep state. So I have a mini gobstopper now that I'm knitting from, that I know will be enough to make it to the same point in the sock. Then I'm going to put them both on the same needle, and I will be just, yeah, 2 at a time doing the cuff in what I have left with the contrasting yarn. So I know I'll be using up all of it. It seems to work well for me, I think, and it's like fairly mindless knit through and through. Not so mindless that I should have omitted the decreases after the heel, but there you have it. I could have of course left it in, but given I'd already done the first sock, it would have had different, not just different width, but also different length, because the stripes would have gotten a bit wider, and so I would have finished the striping of the second sock earlier than the other, and it would have been a bit shorter unless I included more stripes, which could have then crashed into the purple, which then would have come next to the cuff, which is slightly different purple, and it just would have annoyed me. So I found it better to just rip it out and make sure that they are the same. I was kind of used to be like, oh, I don't care if my socks are super matchy. If I ever do self-striping on, I'm not gonna care. And sometimes I don't. Sometimes I have done pairs where I'm like, whatever. But apparently with these socks, I really do care, because the yarn, I mean, it's Nomadic Yarns, it's coming from the States. These things are quite hard to get for me, mostly because of the import tax, and which is kind of the point of import tax, I guess, because they want you to use domestic products. But it's special because it's also part of the Tits Out collective, because I have been picking up some yarns from here and there. I got Fab Funky Fibers, I got Nora George, I got Stranded yarns, and now I got Nomadic Yarn. So I picked up a few here and there just to get this absolutely crazy kind of almost glow in the dark colorway. It doesn't glow in the dark, but you know, you'd almost think so. And I want them to be perfect, because this is a very rare and special yarn. I haven't weighed how much I have left of this, but I could probably make another pair of socks, quite frankly. I also have a little thing to say about where I am containing this project, because this bag I picked up from Kirsty in Scotland. This is her logo there, and she makes Moomin bags, and I think Moomin bags is like going to be my new slight knitting bag obsession. I did buy a bunch of Moomin fabrics when I was dabbling into sewing before the summer, but I haven't really revisited since. I know that when I go to Bergen Knitting Festival, there will be a little someone who's going to be selling more Moomin print knitting bags, and I'm only human, an adult human, but still very much fond of the Moomins, which is a Finnish children's book. So it gets quite deep and dark sometimes, but it's still a children's book mostly thing. It's a whole new like concept world, kind of, yeah, like a, I don't know if I want to call it a fantasy world, but it does have species and like a landscape that is really quite its own thing. It doesn't really come with an explanation. It's just like, yep, these are Moomins, they live in a house, they're a family, they're all the Moomins, and they're all the people and beings, and it's a strange world. You should really check it out. So it got like a measuring tape fabric on the inside. I'm not sure if I can actually use it for measuring. If it's on to scale, I might, but I thought it was cute. And so my socks, they live in here because it's all like super screamy colors, and just everything about this makes me very happy. And yeah, that was like kind of, I guess, my Perth project, because I was, while the yarn wasn't sold at Perth, I received it there and I bought the bag there, so yeah. Now, after Perth, I had planned to go to Edinburgh. Now, lovely Shamika told me that she wouldn't mind sharing her hotel room with me and letting me stay for a few days there. So we both stayed there from Monday till Wednesday. Monday we mainly just spent walking around with Anna of Yarnesty and Liz of Trailers Yarns, and also Pom, who I met in Greece, was with us because she lives in Edinburgh, and that was really fun. And we had more haggis and neeps and mashed potatoes and that kind of thing. And so yeah, that was absolutely lovely. I even ran into one of you guys on the streets in Edinburgh, so hello if you're watching. Hey, it was really nice to meet you. That was completely unexpected. When you came up to me, I was like, someone's gonna ask me directions, I don't know where anything is. This doesn't happen to me a lot, so it was really nice to meet you. And thanks for telling us that the yarn shop in the area was closed on that day, because otherwise we may have made the trip. But we did go to Ninja Twist Studios. I stayed strong. I didn't buy anything, although I think that studio is wonderful. It's got so many nice yarns and they come untwisted. They just hang there as hanks and you can just feel all the fibers. And oh, I'm impressed by how much yarn that lady's managed to squish into that tiny shop. But on day 2, on Tuesday, me and Shamika had made a little date with the Ysolda Teague studio. So if you don't know already, Ysolda is a designer, of course you know this, she's a very accomplished knitting designer, but she also has a studio, which is the location of one of my favorite online yarn shops. Now I do have a number of favorite yarn shops online. I mostly use brick and mortar shops and festivals, but I do love Ysolda's shop. I really like the Pearlescence shop and Holst's shop and Midwinter yarns. There are a few online yarn shops that do get me visiting them sometimes. But yeah, Ysolda's shop is by far the one I order from the most, because it's pretty much the only way I can get Roma yarn to the UK. In the UK that wasn't possible until she started selling it there, and I'm so excited that she is, and I haven't really stopped thanking her for that yet. And so I was very excited when she I guess accepted my request to come and visit the studio, and they received us so well. It was Ysolda and Rebecca, who I know from earlier because we shared Airbnb back in for Oslo Knitting Festival, where I was like completely yarn lobbing with like, look, it's a pelt wool. You want pelt wool in your yarn shop? Which they do have, but I do believe they have they had thought about it already, so I was like kind of, yeah, unashamedly pushing my favorite yarns, which is what I do. You guys know this. So yeah, they received us really well. They obviously had all the Roma yarn and the pelt wool there and all the other yarns they have in their shop, which we got to see and squish in person. It was a huge relief because I needed more yarn for this thing that I've had to partially frog and reknit for this publication at the end of the month. So that sorted out that problem. I could just get more of that yarn that I had bought in Oslo because I could get it there. And we got to see all the books, because the Ysolda website is a great source for knitting books. And if I haven't started already, I'm just gonna run like all the stuff that I filmed while I'm talking here, if I'm not gonna include it at the end. There might be a vlog at the end of this. I might make an extra travel vlog, I'm not sure. I said that last week as well and I didn't make anything. Anyway, I really liked being in the shop. I especially liked that they offered us some David's tea, because Rebecca's from Canada and knows how good David's tea is. And yeah, we just had a good chat. I think they let us stay for nearly an hour, which was super generous, because they're, you know, they're actually at work. And so in the end we wrapped up with the things that we wanted to buy, and I bought a few little things. Most of these things you are of course going to see in the acquisition section, but this one has already been cast on, because I have been very curious about this for the longest time, because it looks like a basic raglan, but there's something going on that intrigues me. Plus there's like brioche, and yeah. And then I talked to Becky and Virginia when I was in Frankfurt, and they'd both knitted it, or at least attempted knitting it, and said, oh yeah, I thought it was a simple raglan, but it's turned out to have so much more to it, and it's got all these like technique booby traps, I think Christina Fullenwein called it, and that maybe scares some people off. For me, that was like, I'm intrigued, I want to knit this, I want to try this, what is this? It's like a raglan with all these like secrets. So I have cast it on already. First I want to talk about the yarn. I am using Stein Fine Wool by the Little Grey Sheep, because the design was initially made for Ysolda's blend number 1. Whoa, hello sun. I thought it was going to be a clouded day. Ysolda doesn't obviously sell blend number 1 anymore. It was a limited blend that I had every opportunity to buy but didn't, so it's my own fault. It came undyed in this lovely grey that the sweater sample was made in, and it's spun at Joan Arbon, which turns out Stein Fine Wool is also, and it looks to me like it's spun at the same weight. The meterage isn't that far off. I have this ability to recognize now if a yarn has been spun at Joan Arbon or Laxton's mill. I can just recognize their woolen or worsted spun technique, as Laxton does woolen, Joan Arbon does worsted, and I just look at them and I'm like, this is Joan Arbon, isn't it? So yeah, and it's in my favorite color. If anyone's like, because I talk about every red, blue, purple under the sun and call them burgundy. This is the burgundy. This is like the burgundy above all burgundies, and I'm so thrilled that the little grey sheep has dyed these. I have so much love for their yarn and the entire story behind what they do. I do believe they have been interviewed by Fruity Knitting, so if you want to know more about them, do make sure you find that video. It is so inspiring and I want to buy all the yarn and support them because my goodness, that is just awesome. So the other thing about this yarn, obviously it is, they have their own breed, the Stein fine wool. It is sort of related to the Merino, but it seems a little bit sturdier, and that makes me think of blend number 1. It has some Merino in it. It does also come with some Polwarth, it did, and it just seemed like a very, very good substitute. It does seem to knit up at the exact same gauge without filling with a raw gauge or anything, so I'm very, very thrilled about that. One thing I'm not so thrilled about is that this is the length of the hank. I can't even make it fit into the frame. So it's way, way too big to fit my chiaogoos Amish style Swift. So I've either have to take off yarn from the hank as I'm holding it this way, put it along the floor, make sure it doesn't overlap so it doesn't tangle, and then wind it up on my ball winder, repeat process. Or you could have a friend come over and be your Swift. So I might need another friend to Swift for me again, because this is not good to put on the winder. It causes a huge, huge yarn barf. But there's only one skein left for me to wind. I have wound that one I just showed you, and one I'm knitting from, and one I've already knitted out, which is like, there's a little leftover hanging here. So I'm going to try to show you the sweater, but it's sat on a very short, relatively short circle. It's an 80 centimeters. So one sleeve and the body is on this, and the other sleeve is already happening, because the pattern, and I love this, the pattern is telling you to start with the sleeve before the body, which is kind of what I already do, but it's nice to like see that that's in a pattern for a change. I don't know why, it's just kind of got me happy. So this yarn, it is hand dyed, but it doesn't seem to have any problems with it. Yes, there's a hint of pooling, and this is probably the brightest light you will ever see this in. So if this is all it does, I am totally happy with it. It does seem to knit up very nicely. I don't see any reason to stripe this. The only times I am striping it is when I'm transitioning between skeins. And I'm going to try to make sure that I keep this little nugget for the other sleeve, and the leftover from this sleeve I will keep for the body, so I can stripe it into the next skein I will be knitting with then, which will be, you know, one of each of what I just showed you, the one that was skeined up and the one that isn't. Caked up, sorry. Planning. You need to plan these things when it's hand dyed. It's a rough world. So the neckline. This is where most people seem to have run into problems, and the pattern is like various like support sites and conversations and forum posts about this. It's been recommended that if you're new to brioche, you should swatch first. You should try out in the Ysolda blog, there's the swatch pattern for it, and how you try out the different techniques. I didn't do that, and I'm completely new to brioche. I've only done one pass brioche, which is completely different, looks the same kind of, and I was fine. It's absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong here. As long as you read instructions, the pattern is completely self-contained. The only time I went on a bit of a was when I thought, I think it's like bark 2 or something like that. I thought it was a bark 2 together. It's not. It's just that you use the yarn over to apply to both knit stitches or something like that. So you still have 2 bark stitches. There is, however, one little problem with the neckline. That is the back. It flops over, because brioche doesn't really pull together the way rib does. Even though it's a ribbed brioche, it does this. I'm kind of hoping I could steam block this into being nicer. Maybe I can squash it together, just like put it in water and squish it together, give it a bit of springiness. Other than that, I'm not sure what to do. Clearly I should have knitted to a smaller needle size. I had to go up a quarter needle size to get gauge for the body, and so I just did the corresponding thing for the rib for the neckline. And in hindsight, I guess maybe I shouldn't have, but I think even quarter needle size smaller wouldn't have solved this. So this might just be the yarn, it might just be my tension, I don't know. It could block out, but I want to ask you guys if you have any advice on this, how I can fix it, because I am not frogging the whole thing. And usually what I would have done is to rip out the neckline and knit it again and graft it on. But I don't know how to graft brioche. You see, it goes straight seamlessly into the brioche here. But it seems to have a weird bias that way. I don't know what's up with that, but whatever. I can't graft brioche. If there's a way to graft brioche, I will try. Believe me, I will try. But assuming that's hard, when it's a 2-pass brioche, the normal brioche, I might just try to pull the strings every row until I've gone through all the rounds and have just a longer tail here that should come round, I suppose. It could of course throw off the tension, the gauge and the evenness entirely and become super ugly, because it's not really how you're supposed to do things. I thought about maybe picking up a rib on the inside here and grafting it onto the neck, but that's going to look really ugly in the front here, so maybe I could just do in the back, but that would look uneven. I don't know. So any help and advice appreciated. I thought about sewing in an elastic, but because this is brioche, which is kind of like double knit, there isn't really any way to put the elastic. There isn't an inside, you know, it will show. And I don't like elastics, and it might be the only solution though. So if it's the only solution I will, but it will be the last thing I will consider. Because yeah, I'm not frogging the whole thing. It had a lot of short rows to make it sit this way, to have this really lovely fit. So with my love of purling, I am not doing that again, but I have enjoyed the process of this. There's a reason I've gotten through so much of this when I have no business casting on more garments. I got like 16 garments going. I have 2 that I'm really trying to push out for my own publication. I have 1 I'm trying to push out for a proper publication, and I have all these accessories that need finishing, and you know, the PhDs. So this one has been a bit of a guilty pleasure, but I never really feel guilty about my knitting, so I don't know why I would call it that, but you know what I mean. It's like, it's a cheeky knit. And I love, oh, this is my favorite part about this entire thing, and why I would highly recommend it. I have issues with raglans. I don't like how they're just like increasing uniformly in a line, because that's just not how I'm shaped. And if you put it flat, it looks like a triangle shape. It's not a good fit. This one, however, look at that shape. Okay, I'm holding this in a really dumb way. There we are. So the increase rate changes throughout, from being a lot to being less to being somewhat to being a lot, or something like that. I mean, I'm obviously not going to give away the pattern. Some pulling tendencies here, but I really don't care. This is nice, and it can happen even if you stripe. So there you go. I should not sing. Oh dear. I've been doing that a lot lately, just singing stuff that I'm saying. It's terrible. I grew up with a friend who has like perfect pitch, so like every attempt at adding a melody to what I say has been very swiftly, yeah, put an end to, shall we say. But there we are. I hope you've gotten an idea now that this shape is quite unusual. It's not just your usual straight raglan. It increases a lot for the body at first. The sleeves sort of kept a bit more stable for the shoulders. Then more increases are happening for it. It's like, oh, I love it. It's gonna fit so well. Yeah, and it's gonna be my favorite color, and I love the Stein fine wool so much. I could spend this entire episode talking about it, but we're nearly at an hour already, at least if I don't edit out a lot of stuff. And I haven't even gone through my acquisitions, so this is gonna be a long one. You're welcome. Maybe watch it in 2 goes, I don't know, but yeah, I love it so much, and it's so just smooth sailing from now on. It really is just the yoke that will give you, I guess, a bit of a challenge just for this little triangle, but I didn't really find it a problem. It's not something I would shy away from in any way. The pattern is, as I said, completely self-contained. Just make sure you have your alone time and, you know, not a headache, a bit of water, that kind of thing when you do it, and then you can bring out the rest of the projects among friends easily. It's really not that hard, so I really like it. I absolutely love it, actually. So I have nearly gone through all of my whips now, except this, because for those of you who watched to the very end of last week's episode, I put up a bit of a cheeky couple of seconds bonus where I told you a bit of an acquisition that I forgot to mention. I am now the happy owner of a knitting machine. It is a Brother KH836. Hang on. Yes, 836. I just had to check. It's behind the camera. But yeah, I thought I'd just talk about what I've tried. I had some friends coming over on Sunday. We were initially going to meet somewhere else, but I wasn't really feeling too energetic. It's just stuff and reasons. So they came over here, and I bought lots of food from Whole Foods because apparently I needed to treat myself and pay twice as much for my food than I normally have to do. And there's something about Whole Foods that reminds me of Norwegian supermarkets. It's just a lot more like green and fresh and inspiring food. So We had weirdly oblong burgers because the brioche buns were like not round. Yeah, anyway, it was super tasty and they seemed very happy, and we had a knit and they were very intrigued by the machine. And it hadn't occurred to me that, you know what, it might be good to put a programmer and a physicist on the task. So they just had a go at it. They set it up for me, they looked through the instructions that they downloaded, they did the whole thing, and I just got to try out this watch after they had tried it out. I didn't have to use my brain at all. It was wonderful. And so we did a swatch. Let's see if I can find the first. Well, this is the tightest one, so I assume it was this one. We tried out the different gauges. This is like, was it, we tuned it to 6, and it's like between 28 and 30 stitches to 10 centimeters or 4 inches. It's pretty sturdy fabric. We used West Yorkshire Spinners sock yarn, the same I showed in the Blue Lagoon, and yeah, it's a pretty nice fabric. I could totally, I mean, I could get sock type fabrics with this machine easily. Obviously it only knits flat, so if I wanted to do socks with it, I'd have to do them flat and then graft them, which I'm not opposed to. Yeah, I have a machine. I'm going to show you some of the other swatches. This one is a lot looser. I think this is the loosest gauge we managed to get. This is tuned up all the way to 10. It's about a 24 stitch gauge, which is my favorite hand stitch gauge because it is as loose as I would comfortably do a 4-ply woolen spun non-superwash yarn in colour work. You can knit them looser if you do another type knit, but in colour work I wouldn't go that much looser. So anything tighter than that is usually where I'm like, I don't know if I can be bothered. So it's actually kind of nice that this machine only does that gauge and tighter. I think this is, these are also the same gauge. I just tried practicing using the machine because I've been like getting these like weird loops at the end and stuff. This was the end, but yeah, this is a loop. But I found that if I just hold the feeding yarn from above, I just hold it right until the machine wants to pull it down to knit, it's fine. It's like you have to kind of tension the first stitch you do on a row if you hand knit, that kind of thing. So just trying out swatches, getting comfortable with it, and I'm super eager to knit myself a boxy with it because boxy comes with an option to knit it flat. I think that's mainly because Howie Locatelli knits with a version where you have a long straight needle under your arm, and it really does make a huge difference whether you knit or purl. But I'm a round knitter for sure if I'm hand knitter, which I am first and foremost. So yeah, I am very keen on doing the boxy. I have wound up some yarn for it. This is the yarn I want to use. It's an old Stash Beast. It's from, oh, I'm gonna write them on screen. Hang on, no. Yarn Indulgences, which I've had in my stash for the longest time. I have wanted to destash it several times because my love for superwash yarn has diminished. It's not gone because I still think it has its place in my wardrobe, and I've loved the cardigan knit from my grandmother and superwash yarn, and we'll see more of it in Aquisitions. But yeah, it has sort of gone in and out of my destash pile. It is a superwash merino cashmere nylon blend. It's quite more plump than the usual bases you will find, and it's quite variegated between red and blue, a very faint red and blue. It looks a lot more mixed up when it's kicked up, but it's quite distinct. It's 1/2 red, 1/2 blue. So I know it can pull, it will need striping, so I will have to find out how to stripe with the machine. So I still have a lot of swatching to do and a lot to learn with the technique. I probably need to oil it a bit, get more parts, I need more weights. There's a lot of things I need to get my head around. For the time being, I am using the crafty class made by Renee Callahan, who is a fellow East London designer and almost neighbour and extremely brilliant knitting teacher. She teaches a lot here in your local yarn shops in London. She goes to yarn festivals in the UK and teaches all of her amazing skills, and she's a really, really good teacher. And so because this is a paid for class, I am obviously not going to be teaching knitting machines on this podcast because everything I learn will pretty much be from her videos. I do have a friend who's been super lovely in helping me out understand. She's been super patient with like having video conferences almost where I am just trying out a swatch and like staying with me throughout the swatch. So thank you so much, Michelle. Like, and also helping me find the right machine and helping me find the right part and hopefully matching it with a ribber in the end, which is gonna help me knit rib and knit in the round. Yeah, so I will mainly approach this from the point of view of Michelle's help, Renee's videos, and hopefully also attend the knitting machine studios classes in my neighborhood, because in Bethnal Green, up in Knitwork Studios, they do classes, and I thought I will try those out when I have time. So the vast majority of the knowledge I will gain from this will come from paid classes, so therefore this is not going to become a free class. I'm just going to tell you my experience with the machine. I will tell you where I got the knowledge, but I can't go beyond that because I really have no idea what I'm doing at the moment, so I'm not comfortable with that. The other thing I want to say up front is kind of my knitting machine philosophy, because I am aware there are some who consider knitting machines cheating. I don't. I consider knitting machines to be a completely different thing. I consider them to be what a sewing machine is to hand seaming, is what a knitting machine is to hand knitting, and it's just not the same. It is a quicker way of doing things, but it does also come with its limitations and advantages. Like, there's some things that always will need hand seaming, like there's always something that will need hand knitting, at least with the current knowledge level I have of machine knitting. But I am never ever gonna substitute my hand knitting for machine knitting. Machine knitting is like a new and completely separate thing. I'm probably never gonna use all the hand knitting patterns that I love on the machine. I will try boxy because it's huge, and I will be using a yarn I haven't really felt the need to hand knit with, or the want to hand knit with, I don't know. I want to try out that fine cashmere yarn I bought earlier and do a tight knit sweater with it, because I know I'm never going to do that by hand. So that's kind of what the machine's going to be for me. It's going to do the things that I don't want to do by hand. Most knitting I really want to do by hand, because I am a capital H hand knitter. That is me, who I'll always be. And like, I'm never gonna knit my own patterns with a machine because they are hand knitting patterns. So the machine is just like an extra bonus hobby, a different craft. I think I will be using to get through my stash mainly, I think, and just because I'm intrigued to learn something new. Like, I have this pile of pure wool that I am not really planning on using on anything. It's just a low grey yarn. So I'm gonna see if I can knit it up as loose as I can on the machine, so it'll probably be the 24 stitch gauge. I'm gonna try to do a swatch first, felt it in the machine, and if that works out, I'm gonna do a big box, just like a proper container box. Because that was one of the very first things I knitted, and it was a free pattern and hand knitted in a chunky yarn, similar to what I used with the Speedy Saddle mittens, if you're curious. And I felted it and I used it a lot, but it did become quite thick, and almost the thickness of the fabric made for it to be less storage but still took up a bit of space. So I think I want to do one that's a bit finer but will still stand up and sew, and I can fold it over so it's got like a hem or something, I don't know. So that is something I'm excited to have to do, because it will basically make sure that a big chunk of my stash will just go away like that. And it's a pile of my stash I really wasn't sure what I was going to do with in the first place. It was just a big bag of yarn for £20. What can I say? I love a good bargain. As for the machine itself, I don't know if I could say it was a bargain. It was kind of a little bit above average price for what you can expect for a machine. I paid about £95 for both the machine and the table and the parts of the tools that came with it. I could have paid less had I lived somewhere else, but this was a 15-minute walk away from my home. I could just get Nikki of Tea Possibilities, who isn't too far away either, and her boyfriend to come and help me out, pick it up, and I'm super grateful for them to help me carry it here. It was just all very convenient, so in the end I was willing to pay a bit more for a machine that I could just carry here. I didn't even have to take it on a bus. Like, that's crazy. So it all seems to be working out. I need to, like, yeah, oil it, get some weights, and there's just getting used to the whole thing. I will probably primarily knit with it when there aren't people at home, because it does make a little bit of noise, and while I seem to have louder flatmates than what I am, I still like to be the considerate one. So yeah. So that is all I have to say about my machine so far. If you have any questions about it, I'm not sure how capable I am of answering them, but you can try. I don't really know what I'm doing yet. I didn't even know anything about anything to do with it when I was buying it. I mainly bought it on advice from Michelle, and I'm slowly getting used to it, and I hope I can get through some of my stash and get through a lot of stockinette mainly.